Welcome to the Fight for Our Citizen podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Fox. Today I got to sit down with Ruben Leyva from Las Cruces, New Mexico. He's an Apache historian who does powerful work for the Chihéne tribe, the Gila Apache. And I caught up with him at Apache Gold Casino today while he was attending a conference for San Carlos Apache tribe. And it was a great conversation, and so let's get into it right now. All right, and today I'm here with Ruben from Las Cruces, New Mexico. Ruben, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm blessed. It's an honor to be here with you finally.
Yeah.
We had an idea that one day we would sit down and just talk.
Yes, I know. And I'm glad that we finally got a chance to sit, face to face and talk about it. Just going through all your, we met through Facebook, and I seen all your work on there, your articles, all the things that you wrote, and all your papers. And so when I have seen you before on Facebook, at the time I didn't know about the Gila Apaches, and that's where what you talk about the most, right?
That is correct. We are technically the same people as a lot of people want to refer to as the Warm Springs.
Yes.
And certainly we have other connections with other bands, Chiricahua bands, the Chihéne, the Badonkahe, and the Netdahe.
Okay.
And so we don't normally say Chiricahua because it's a very, very special story associated with the Chiricahua name. A lot of pain and healing still occurring associated with the prisoners of war. And so I had a grandmother, an uncle also, that went on that journey east to Florida, Alabama, and then ultimately to Fort Sill, and then family ending up at Mescalero. But at the same time, my direct ancestors were a part of the Apaches who were able to remain. So now I'm controversial because I tell you about not all Apaches got on the train. Not all Chiricahuas got on the train, which because you're family.
Yes, right. And there's a lot that actually escaped the train, that got off the train midway through, maybe through Texas. And there is some that, like you said, that hid in the town, which some people from the town actually helped hide them.
Yeah, this is not new. We're talking about 1886. That's when they say the so-called surrender of the Chiricahua and Geronimo and Naiche, who were in the Sierra Madre and ultimately walked to Fort Bowie, right? Okay. And they were put on trains,
right,
there in Holbrook. And anyway, to get to the point is, if you invert those numbers and don't say 1886, but you say 1868, you have a example of a time frame where you had Navajos who were running with the Apaches because many of them had made a decision after hearing that they were taking them to the Bosque Redondo. They didn't want to go, and they got the word that they were rounding people up. So some of these Navajo, they took off Diné regalia and put on Apache regalia and ran with us so they didn't have to go.
Right.
So this is nothing new.
Yeah.
So when a lot of people were getting rounded up, being taken in 1886, then some people, so we're San Carlos, we're Mexican.
Yeah.
You see, they didn't go too much further west from San Carlos, right? They thought they had everybody rounded up. They forgot that south of Tucson in the Huachuca Mountains, that area was another hiding area.
Yes.
We went right over there. They didn't think about that. We went up to the Mangus Mountains in New Mexico, Catron County, right there. Put on the Navajo clothes. Put on the turquoise.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's not hard to figure out, man. People see, like, to be an Apache, right? We are learning all the time. Everything we do starts with a prayer. So when you start reading these books that were written by people that are non-Apaches and stuff, you have to say a prayer before you get into those books.
Right.
Because your mind is going to be turned upside down with their understanding of how we were.
Yeah.
But you want your ancestors to come in and intervene so that you can read between the lines.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's how we always do here in San Carlos. My uncle does that a lot. When you cut for willow, you do a prayer. When you cut for wood, you do a prayer. And that's something that he had taught us, and something that Apaches do for everything is prayer, blessing.
I learned that really good lesson from White Mountain Apache elder Ramon Riley. And we had a conversation. He and I, we could talk for like an hour easily. And then it seems like it's only 5 minutes. We just have a special connection. And he was telling me all about, everything is a prayer.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything.
Everything.
Yeah. And so, going through your work, and how did you start, like going through your history and finding out all about your family and where you come from, and, how this all started? Yeah.
Well, okay. So this is a kind of a long story, but I'm going to give you the short version.
Okay.
There's a community of Gila Apache. Administratively, when they're writing a grant for financial support, or they're writing things, they'll use the name Chihéne Ndé, red paint people.
Yeah.
All right. Chihéne Ndé Nation. And a lot of us still live in southwest New Mexico on the west side of the Rio Grande River. And then up into Socorro, Doña Ana, Sierra, Socorro counties, Grant County, Hidalgo County, Luna County, all these southwestern counties. And then some even live near Albuquerque. And we all still get together. We're just a community. We're not a federally recognized tribe, but we do a lot of stuff. We don't have a reservation. We have some land, 60 some acres in the Silver City. So we could do ceremonies, things there, go to the Gila National Forest and do ceremony there. So real Apaches, but not, what the United States considers legitimate, right? You have to be federally recognized.
Yeah, right.
So some years ago, they asked me, the one we used to call Audrey Espinoza, a mentor of mine, a matriarch within the community. She said, I'm going to work on a project. The chairman, Manuel Sanchez, good man, he asked her to write a petition to the federal government for federal acknowledgement about this group that exists. And somebody said, well, you can't do that because aren't you the same people as at San Carlos and in Mescalero? No, because, we weren't taken as prisoners of war.
Right.
Even the documents say they kind of forgot about the people that stayed. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was talking to somebody from one of the tribes. I won't say the name, but I said, yeah, there's Chiricahua at San Carlos. I know. Mm-hmm. He said, oh, and yeah, they went there after the boarding schools. He was my elder, so I didn't argue.
Right.
But that's not true.
No, it's not.
Right. But, so when she asked me to do that, I had to talk to the elders, right? Mm-hmm. The Jurados, the Martinezes, and, people are highly respect the Flores families. Say, how do you feel about me helping out with this? And they say, yeah, I think it's good. Good experience for you. So we had another tribal member, Vasquez. She's a PhD at the University of New Mexico. She was helping out as well as the chairman. So I was going to be the research assistant. Well, started going into this thing, started sort of just sharing the knowledge I had. And they were impressed. They're like, okay, no, you're in, and take off and start just sharing what you have. And so together we built. It wasn't just me, but together we built. And at the end of the day, we had this 275-page document. But before it was over, they had already told me that I should go back and get my PhD. I have a master's in business administration, and that University of New Mexico was starting a Native American Studies doctoral program. And I said, okay, well, let me talk to my wife. I'll think about it. He said the tribe could use that. The community could really benefit if you got that. We'll write the letters of support for you. Those three. The tribe has approved you being on this committee. They support you in how you tell the stories. They trust you. By this time, I'm like the assistant historian for the tribe. I mean, I'm like moving at light speed through this thing. We get this thing turned in. I get into the program, and the one we call Audrey passes away. So I take on this mantle, sort of doing the historian job for her because she was the tribal historian. And I did that for like a year after she passed, to help the tribe. But then I really had to dig in to finish this doctoral program. And another, the vice president of the community at that time, she said, well, why don't you write a letter to the editor? I said, dang, why didn't I think of that? That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So I wrote to the Apache Moccasin right here,
Mm-hmm.
the Silver Belt.
Yeah.
And a couple of other places, and Grant County Beat, different Apache communities started writing. And then the one named Audrey, before she passed, she had read a few of these letters to the editor. She said, you need to keep doing this. That's my last wish for you. Keep doing this. Keep writing. I just kept writing, man. So now over 40 of these things I've written.
Yeah. And the more you dig into the history, the more it just keeps going. I mean, you could go from, like in my ancestry, I could go from my grandfather and all of a sudden hit all these stories and like, okay, I'm done, but I didn't go to the grandmother's side and hit all these stories. And so, I mean, when you get into something like this, it doesn't stop.
Yeah. So this is sort of what you're talking about is what my PhD is about, my dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to defend my dissertation in the fall.
Okay.
This fall, 2026.
All right.
And then after that, if I pass, then I'll be PhD, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's about this idea that the United States has a very administrative office style way of looking at everything. And it pervades through and it lives in everything that the United States does as government. We can look at the history and how they write it. And if they can't find a document that says certain things, then that's where it stops right there. So they may see a document. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. And it says so-and-so. You say, oh yeah, that's my grandmother. I know she was right here in San Carlos.
Mm-hmm.
It says, oh, well, it says she's a Mexican. So she's a Mexican right there. But then you tell me, or you found out that grandmother on that side, she was Yaqui.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
But in the United States, what did the papers say? So paper is a weapon. Paper is like a cultural genocidal weapon.
Right.
To erase indigenous identity.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I say, you're a Mexican or whatever, or if I write in the census that you spoke Spanish, then people say, oh, there was a Mexican. Or if I say a last name like mine, Leyva, oh, that's Mexican. But guess what? We found out it wasn't actually me, but just through the research and interviews with people. Dr. Ana Maria Alonso, graduate PhD out of University of New Mexico in anthropology. She's talking to us, says, the Apache who, the leader of the southern group, right? He's a Leyva.
Okay.
That's his name. So it's like, so you're telling me that if I have a Mexican name, I could be an Apache too? Yes, you can. We got to change our thinking, right? We people say, oh, well, my last name is Johnson. Mm-hmm. My last name is Lincoln. My last name is Washington. I'm just using presidential names.
Right.
So I'm Apache. So because you have an English or a white name, now that makes you Apache because you don't have a Spanish name, and you run from a Spanish name because you're afraid that means Mexican.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, in a lot of cases, it was a white man that spoke Spanish that gave Apaches those Mexican names when they got baptized because maybe they were a servant in somebody's home. They were a captive of the Mexicans.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misunderstanding about this history. So I talk about the record and I talk about the archive and I talk about archival violence and I talk about that through relationship and through story and through genealogy and place-based understanding of the geography and the places where we went and where we prayed, Oak Flat, all of these different important places. Those are relational. Somebody said, well, we didn't pray at Oak Flat. That didn't mean that some families didn't pray at Oak Flat.
Right.
You see? And sometimes the European mind, they want to reduce us into one way of being. And they say, well, I talked to those Apaches over there. They didn't pray at Oak Flat. So it wasn't something that you guys did. Mm-hmm. They don't realize that, there were over 60 bands that were counted in this place that was the first concentration camp in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Here at San Carlos.
Yeah. And like I said, a lot of, if you were brown skin, you were sent to San Carlos, Salt River people. There were some Navajos, Yavapais, Yumas, all the way from Colorado River. And they were all sent here, San Carlos. So there's a lot of people. And then like you were saying earlier, a lot of the Apaches, because they had the trade, spoke Spanish. They spoke Mexican. They spoke that it was universal language, I think, back in that time.
You're absolutely right, man. It was the language of the marketplace. How did you trade if you couldn't speak the language with the people you were trading with, the Mexican communities? Even the name, San Carlos.
Yeah.
That's a Spanish name.
Yeah, right.
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. They were saying it was from a priest that came here a long time ago, and the Spain king was Carlos. And so when he got here, he named it San Carlos.
Even Mescalero, that's a Spanish name.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
We gotta take off the blinders. Sometimes we're not seeing the whole picture of colonization.
Right.
So when we decolonize, right, what does that mean, right? That's a big word. People, right? Somebody said that's a $5 word right there. It means that we're going to look at things with the understanding that it was another way of doing things before the way we're told things were done.
Yeah.
We can go back before the United States and that occupation. We can go back before Mexico and that settler colonialism. We can go back before Spain and that colonization. And we had a way of doing things.
Right.
Somebody said, well, if the Europeans didn't write it down, then you didn't exist. They said, well, wait a minute, we were here.
Yeah.
Well, you were, but we hadn't written it down in English yet.
Mm-hmm.
So when we wrote down San Carlos on a paper, then we created you.
That's where the history started.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we just, like on Star Trek, we just got beamed up right there into history.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I could see that because we started a long time ago. And, even I think with the Mexicans, I think that actually comes from, Geronimo in the books. I don't know who writes it or if he actually said it, but, he hated the Mexicans. And at the time, people, take that universally.
Let's be clear. We're not the same people, right?
Yeah, right.
You know that. We're not the same people. And let's say, I hate to use this term Mexican because it's such a
because when I use that word, a lot of people are like, hey, what?
Yeah, right. Mexican American. Let's say that, right?
Right.
Because Mexican is not a bad word. It's a good word. But at the same time, we're different because a Mexican American could have Apache descent or ancestry, right? But they could also have any other indigenous ancestry.
Yes.
Right? Yaqui.
Yeah.
Tarahumara.
Yeah.
Raramuri, they call themselves down there. Mayan. Even though Mayan is not in Mexico per se, right? It's Central America. We get caught up in the United States, as you say, no matter where you're from, you're Mexican. You could be from Costa Rica, you speak Spanish, right? So that's a trap.
Yeah.
It's a trap word. So we got to be careful and we got to be more sensitive and appreciate our brothers and sisters. But at the same time, we're different.
Right.
And when somebody has some Mexican heritage and they identify as Apache, you can't just sign them off as they're not Apache, but not all Mexicans have Apache ancestry, right? They could have other indigenous ancestry. So they don't automatically make them. That doesn't automatically make them Apache. Then you got something called nationalism, right? So after 1821, when Mexico got its independence from Spain, they wanted to create this Mexican identity because they were free from Spain and they were their own republic. And with that idea, they want everybody to identify as being Mexican. Okay. Right, as a national. That was like your nation. So we got to remember too, somebody could be a Mexican national, but they're not even indigenous to America. You could be somebody who, for generations, your family's been living in Mexico, but you're Chinese.
Yeah. There's a lot.
So you're a Mexican national, but you're Chinese.
Yeah.
That's why, to me, there's a lot of traps in the language that we got to be careful of. Going back to what we started, when we're reading about our people, when we're studying, and you see these things on the internet, a lot of people writing a lot of stuff on social media and this and that, you gotta be careful because there's a lot of information out there and not all of it's good information. Not all of it's correct. So having a connection with your community is key, right? Having those elders, that's key.
And then when we also talk about, we had brought up earlier, about scouts and San Carlos and some of the families, there's a lot of families that have scouts in history. And like I was telling you before, not all scouts chase after the Apaches, like went after Geronimo. A lot of them would sign up to get their weapons back, their horses back, their guns back. And so that would make them be a man again, like be free again and support their family. And, you've been talking about, a lot would go on these expeditions, but take these soldiers the wrong way, just because they really just wanted, and like I had said before, and I seen one of your YouTube, speeches, a lot of them took it back to, continue their ceremonies. And so a lot of ceremony was lost when our guns and, bow and arrows were taken.
Yeah. There's an age, some people say 9 years old, where a young man you're not a mama's boy anymore. Kind of the older cousins and the uncles, they pull you away.
Yeah.
From your mom and say, you're going with us. So, that's traditional. And, we can't talk about everything, but at the same time, there's the way of the warrior, right? The warrior way ceremony. Mm-hmm. And with this idea, this apprenticeship, it's like your uncles step in, and there's a lot of things that you already picked up on because the games that we played as children, they're already prepping you for physical fitness and all this, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
Think how to hide, run, all of these things are important. But you get to this point where traditionally you have to go on 4 raids, right? 4 campaigns and go and, obviously don't get caught.
Right.
Stealing from maybe a Mexican camp.
Village.
Whatever. And then make your way back. And the people that were able to get themselves and their people their age, their peers, and out of there safely, then you kind of got high regard in the male community. And you started being put forward as a leader. And, maybe around that time, people are coming of age and from a male perspective. Right. So there's a lot of lessons about the mountains and the food and healing and special words for war and songs.
Right.
And drumming and how to make weapons and all of those kinds of things. And it's not something that, in our minds right now, I said a prayer before we started because I knew, I wanted everything that we said in a good way, but it's not like going to school.
No,
I was reading about this story about this situation where in this tribe, this lady, she was reconnecting with her people. She was from the tribe, but hadn't lived there and moved back. But she was also going to school, going to college. She wanted to write about her people and what she was learning from them and everything. So she was around there for a long time, just doing things, not a lot of talking, just doing. They're speaking to her, teaching her words and help me with this and hand me that, go get some water. And then, she asked later, I want to sit down and talk to you about what we do for my school. I want to write up about it. I want to write about this, what we do. And the lady said, we thought you were watching for the last year. What, now you want to sit down and talk to us about it?
Yeah. Right.
So it wasn't like that formal sit down.
Mm-hmm.
It's just being there.
Right.
Being present, being in the moment, helping out in a good way and allowing things to come when you're ready, not trying to force it.
Yeah.
Like we didn't force this interview.
No.
It just happened.
Yeah. Right. And that's what I always talk about, even with my uncles and even my father, who's a Pomo from California. Like, they say, well, your dad, he taught you a lot. So, well, he really didn't teach me. I just with him the whole time. I watch him sing. I listen to him sing. I listen to him talk, and just paying attention is how I learn. He's never actually sat me down and said, okay, I'm going to teach you something. Yeah, I had to pay attention. Right. And so it's the same way with down here. Like I pay attention to my uncles. I pay attention to my mom. I pay attention to songs. These actually never really sit down and say, hey, you're getting lectured. If I watch my uncle today and I watch my mom today, that's how I pick up on these things, how I learn. And I just how I try to teach my own kids. is like, I'm not telling them really anything. They're just coming with me. And that's how, as Apaches, that's how you learn these things.
Think about it, right? Yeah, I agree. Think about it. Somebody is going to come and they're going to look at you, especially a kid, because, a kid wants to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to tell you, like, say this person's sort of older, like an uncle figure, or like a mentor, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to mentor you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to teach you. How the kids, that's not how it works. That's not how their brain works.
Mm-hmm.
The kid is going to find who they want to be like. And they're going to be watching that person. You notice that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that.
It's not, I'm your teacher.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like even with, when we do like ceremonies for, come age ceremonies, I watch how, my uncle likes the pole set up. I watch how he likes, the kitchen done. And so like, it doesn't say, hey, everybody come over here. Let me show you how to set a kitchen. You have to watch him. And today, that's how everybody needs to learn is by watching. And there's no real teaching. But there's also a lot of, passing down a lot of knowledge, but you got to pay attention.
Yeah. Cause knowledge is situational. It's contextual. It has a purpose. It has a place, right? I'm going to sit down. I'm going to tell you about the importance of this tree. And I'm going to write down how I'm going to tell you about this. I'm going to explain that this tree has a specific kind of feeling, the specific kind of way that it will feel when you touch it, when you cut it down and you skin it. This is how, like, it's going to take me longer to tell you that than us to go out to the tree and do it right there together where you can, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Exactly.
So when you go, and I'm going to, just give you a personal experience. You're going to go to the forest, right? And you're going to, because everything we need, everything is out there. And you're going to bless that.
Right.
Enough said on that. But we're not going to write all that down.
No.
We're not going to put you in a classroom.
Yeah.
The classroom is out there. So what happened to our classrooms out there?
Yeah, that's true. It's hard to, when I talk about like, Apaches, when we were talking about again before about, Chiricahuas, it's hard to say that term because there's so much, like I've never heard of, I've heard it before, but never talked about, Gila Apaches at the time.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So Gila Apache is one of the few things we ever use to refer to where we're from. The earliest documents that were written down about us were by a priest who was traveling on a mission to convert as many indigenous people as he could up the Rio Grande River from the south to the north. And he stopped where the Pueblos were on the southern end. And our ancestors were visiting them. This is like 1626. We're talking about a long time back. So he wrote down, right, because the leader of the Apaches who were friends with those Pueblos, they used to gamble together and stuff like that. Probably had some intermarriage too.
Yeah.
Of course. That's how it happened. It was, medicine, good medicine in that area, and water with the river, hunting. And he wrote down that they told me that they're from Xila, Xila. Well, somebody would say, well, that can't be. That's not an Apache word. So, well, slow down, right? Well, it means a man's privates,
Yeah.
in the Western Apache.
Yeah.
Somebody says, well, it means my hands in Navajo or other Apache language, right? So I said, well, it could be even the red clay. Xila could be his best way of trying to write that down, right? And then there's even a word, Ila, aspirate mark, which is like a pause, Laahe, which is like the antelope. Maybe there were antelope over there.
Yeah.
But that's what he said. That's where we live. So that's like a real first word that these Spanish people tried to write down, whether they said it right or they Hispanicized it, right? They made it in a way they could pronounce it.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is that Chiricahua, as it was traditionally spoken, referred to an area, the mountains. It wasn't an Apache word.
Right.
We could say Chiricahua now, right, and Apache-ize it, but originally it wasn't. So even Apache, they say it's not even an Apache word.
No, it's not.
Right? A lot of people say it came from the Zuni word Apache. Different people have different ideas, but at the same time, even the language of the Hickory Apache is Apache, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know. But at the same time, let's go back, right? Let's go back to the language that we used.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if you go in the historical documents, you'll see that Xila was modified by the Spanish to Gila, Gila, and it's in Spanish treaties, the first treaties, 1790, whatever, even before. They're talking about these people living in these areas. So we know they're the same people. And then the United States, they even use Gila.
Mm-hmm.
So on the treaties where our people, that we write about in our petition here, to the federal government, those treaties, 1851, 1852, 1853, 1855, whatever, all these, they're the same people. But if you see writing about them bringing us to the table in 1852, it says we're bringing the Gilas to the table, the Gileños, the Gilas. And then if you read the actual writing on the treaties in 1853 and 55, they're talking about the Gila River Apaches, the Mimbres River Apaches, and then in 1855, the Mimbres Band of Gila Apache. These are not new words.
Right.
There was a Gila Apache reservation that was reserved land until early 1880s.
Yeah.
So it's not some name we made up. It's a name that has been documented way back when. And there's a lot of information, if you talk to the elders, and you do, that say that, the people known as the Chiricahua and the people known as the Warm Springs is two different groups.
Right.
They're related, but two different groups.
Yeah.
But everybody just used that Chiricahua umbrella.
Right.
They like that name for whatever.
Yeah.
I think they said that some of those old cowboys used to call them cherry cows. Cherry cows, like a fruit cherry and a cow. That's how they could remember the name.
Yeah.
Cherry cow. The cherry cows are here.
Right.
They just stuck.
Mm-hmm. And that's where, Warm Springs, it was labeled as a Chiricahua reservation and then taken away. So everybody from Warm Springs came to San Carlos.
Well, see, that's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
Right. They wanted Cochise to come out. He agreed to come out and check it out. He was out there a little over a year, I guess. And that name stuck as being a Chiricahua reservation. But in reality, Victoria and Loco, who were leaders there at that time, they were the ones who were more really tied to those lands.
Mm-hmm.
Cochise was more tied to the Dragoon Mountains.
Yes.
Those areas over there. And so he wanted to go back. So while they said that this area, the Warm Springs or Hot Springs, as President Grant documented in an executive order, was really not Chiricahua at all. It was Ndé, right? Red paint people.
That's a tribe you're.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I have ancestors on that are Chihéne also.
Yeah.
Like, it's all these names, they're confusing.
Right.
So that's why in my research, I'm focusing on how we're related and who married who.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I worry about all of these different bands that people belong to, it gets really confusing because I'm born in, right? I'm born into my mother's people, traditionally. I'm born for my father's people, right? Then I can marry into my wife's people and my kids will be born into that. But then my wife could divorce me or could die. I could remarry into another band.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Or I could have more than one wife.
Yeah.
Because remember, Cochise, right? He had they say he had two wives. I don't know,
Yeah.
They say he had two. One was tying him to that Chiconan identity. But then he married Mangus Coloradus' daughter, and she was a Membreña, right? She was from the Mimbres.
Yes.
She was Chihéne because of her mom. And so he didn't go over to that. He didn't become a Chihéne. He stayed at Chiconan.
Yeah.
So even sometimes when a young man is coming up, if he can make adulthood and be considered the leader of his people, he can sometimes remain with that group or go for a time, like a year, and live with his wife's people and then bring his wife and family back. So there's a lot of traps, I call them.
Yeah. Because even Geronimo almost has the same timeline as that. Like, hopping from band to band.
Yeah, because Geronimo had many wives.
Yeah. And that's how he's connected to all these.
Yeah. I'm not qualified to speak on it just for that reason, you know?
Right, right.
He's such an interesting person to study. Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who have written books on him, so no need for me to go there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But the Warm Springs, I think from the story that I've seen from your people was when they got taken to San Carlos, a lot of them actually stayed. Like a lot of the town people actually hid them. So they actually kind of still stayed there until, you're not going to say they're Apache or Gila Apache or Chiricahua because they're going to get taken to, Florida. So, a lot of them kind of hid and, stay under the radar.
Yeah. Two things. One side of my family, the Leyvas, they got there with Agent Clum. He brought everybody over there in 1877. Then the Elias side of my family, they got there in 1879, San Carlos.
Mm.
I guess, it's so interesting because, well, we'll come back to this, but at the same time, when they brought those people there, later they came back and did census, and the Leyva family group was the largest in that Warm Springs red paint people group of all, even more than local, even more than Mangus Coloradus' son Mangus. They had the most people still at San Carlos.
Wow.
Yeah, the biggest group. Biggest group. So, that's documented in the books by Dr. Robert Watt, who did a lot of time, spent a lot of hours at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. So I got that information from him. So there was a real strong presence for some people, because if I went to San Carlos, remember, if I married somebody there, then I already could change a band.
Right. You could be in that band. Yeah, I can see. And again, in St. Carlos, there's so many different Apaches there.
So if we look at this thing about Geronimo and Naiche and, the Chihuahua, his brother Usana and Loco and Nane, and, those big names that were taken east.
Right.
You got to think about, those are their families. It wasn't like all of everybody were taken, but them and their close immediate families were taken. So that's where that band identity can get people mixed up, because you think about, okay, well, they were all taken. Well, everybody that was basically related to them were taken. But, I was hearing San Carlos Apache, PhD, Northern Arizona University professor Marcus Mactima talk at the Western Historical Association conference in 2025. And he talked about there were enough Chiricahua still at San Carlos for the federal government and Congress to approve a letter be sent to get the remaining ones that were still at San Carlos over to Fort Sill. So there had to be a significant number of people that were still at San Carlos for the government to get involved and say, send those people over.
Right.
That meant that all those people that were still there had never gone to Florida. And I don't know what that number is,
Yeah.
I was having breakfast with him. He and I are both speaking at the conference. He's a really good friend of mine. I consider him a mentor. He said, "You're older than me." I said, "Yeah, but be a student for life."
Right. Yes. And like you said, for me, on my side of the family, the Chiricahua, I think they were more, cause a lot of White Mountain Apaches were friends with a lot of Chiricahuas and, actually hid them up there in the mountains. And so, when all that was going on, Chiricahuas came to St. Carlos, but, they were coming from White Mountain because they were hidden up there.
Yeah. And when Geronimo and some of the people, his following, let's say that, we're getting, we're resisting, and we gotta honor him for that, right? Because he's a symbol of resistance. He's a symbol of this idea that no matter what, there's something to fight for. But people were getting in trouble, right? So I was talking to an elder. She's telling me that some of the family up there were living up near Turkey Creek, up there in White Mountain.
Yeah.
Because he was doing things and angering the military, they moved him down to Bylas.
Yeah.
So it was Chiricahuas that were up there, suffering some consequences and getting moved down to Bylas, right? And I don't know how many families that was, but at the same time, that's an example of people who were integrating into these communities. In fact, because Geronimo was at Turkey Creek.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather, I told you I had more than one grandfather here, San Carlos, but the one, Elias, when he came in the 1883 census up at Turkey Creek,
right,
with Geronimo, and they were farming up there at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tangled story, man. It's not clean.
Yeah. And then they also had, and at the time, that's when they had that massacre up there with that medicine man, and that's when they were all up there. And that's not too long ago. And so that's where, a lot of Chiricahuas got split up, a lot of, people were hid at the time. And so, yeah, when St. Carlos started to get evolve, that's when they started to find out there is Chiricahuas in St. Carlos.
That's a real interesting, story. I'm not qualified to speak on it.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's a Western story. I don't even want to say Western Apache because that name is not even a traditional name.
Right.
But, very, very powerful medicine man.
Mm-hmm.
Story, as the story goes. In fact, they did quote Geronimo, in his own words in that autobiography.
Yes.
Saying like he didn't even understand how him and the head leader, how he influenced their thinking. He said even to that day, he could figure out how that his medicine was so strong to where he got a lot of people thinking, differently.
Right.
And I won't say wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They were just thinking differently. Right.
Right.
Because if I say wrong, then all of a sudden now whose side am I on?
Right.
We got to think about that.
Yeah.
When we say, I don't think that person is an Apache, I think that person's a Mexican.
Yeah.
Whose side are you on? You sound like the BIA.
Yeah. Right.
Police.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. You're an agent. Some agents, man. Even on the reses, they're agents. They don't even know it. They don't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
They just want sovereignty, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you start calling out people as who they are, right? There's a need for that, right? To maintain our integrity and knowing, but at the same time, there's a protocol. And there's a protocol for helping people who are disconnected and want to reconnect and not laughing at people when they're trying to learn their language.
Right.
Because I do guest lecture for San Carlos Apache College. And we open up and I say some words and things. And then the students, they feel more comfortable. They say, well, I'll try to say my clans or whomever in my language, but at home, sometimes they laugh at me. No, we're not going to laugh at you.
Right.
So, we got to meet people where they are. Saying there's not some people out there that are, let's just say, not legitimate. There are.
Right.
And we got to protect against that. But at the same time, we can't be agents of the federal government.
Yeah.
We can't be hanging around the forts. You know what I mean? You know what that means? Hang around the forts? Those are the ones that they're worse than the Indian agents.
Okay.
They're watching everything you do, and then they're going to go tell the agent what you did.
Yeah. And that's when we come, the term of cultural sensitivity. We got to have today, especially with the youth, you got to have sensitivity to the youth and the culture because you can't turn youth like that away.
No, man. I had a young man reach out to me. His family, he was a descendant of a federally recognized tribe, Apache tribe, and he wanted to ceremony with us. And I said, well, why don't you ceremony with your people? He said, well, I'm just a descendant now. That's what they call somebody where like your blood quantum is not enough. Yeah. That you get booted out, can't live on the res, whatever. And I said, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. Well, they mistreat me when I go there. And, maybe they, cause I look white, it looks lighter. It's not right, man. Mm-hmm. When we do stuff like that, when we turn away people, we're working against the creator in that moment because the creator is the one that touched that person's heart to want to get that knowledge, to get that medicine they need for healing. Because I know people darker than me and you. We're pretty dark. Yeah. But they don't want to have anything to do with the ceremony and the culture. You see? Yeah. They're running from it. They don't even publicly admit they're native, right? Right. So how do we deal with that? How do we embrace everybody in those moments? Or do we turn them away because, the blood quantum is, 50%, 25%, whatever, and now all of a sudden they're out. Is that really an exercise in our sovereignty? Or is that us serving as agents for the federal government whose initial approval of these tribal constitutions that implemented these pseudoscientific ideas of identity associated with blood, which are not really based in science, right? These blood quantum ideas that they wanted to water us down over time. They want to water us down over time. And when we turn our back, you know, maybe they can't be a tribal member, but they can still be involved. They can still help. They can still do things. They're still got a birthright. You know, they're still an extension of the community.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just cautioning everybody. We all know what to do. We know what's right. I'm nobody's elder. I'm nobody's teacher.
Yeah.
You know, they call me professor, but you know, that's just a job.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we can't be agents for the BIA.
No.
Secret agents, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think being an Apache, like how you have done, I think when people claim Apache, they have to actually look into their history and find out where their people come from instead of just saying, "Oh yeah, I'm Apache." No, where are you Apache from?
Hello.
Who is your name? You know, your mother, your grandmother's name, your grandfather's name.
Hello.
Because you can't just come out and say you're Apache. I have a lot of relatives here that don't have the blood quantum to be San Carlos Apache, but they know everything about their history. And there's some that are tribal members that don't know as much because, you know, well, I'm Apache. I'm in the tribe. That's all I need to know. And so I think, learning where you come from is very important and just saying I'm Apache.
That is absolutely correct. It has to be in your heart. We talked about that. And when you get touched by the hand of the Creator, you're going to have a hunger, a thirst to know the language, the songs, the land, the protocol, how to make the moccasin, how to make the camp dress. You know, not everybody's going to make everything. Somebody maybe is going to bead. Somebody is going to maybe string bead. Somebody is maybe going to make a burden basket.
Right.
Maybe somebody is going to make a fire and keep it going at the ceremony. You know what I mean? There's a lot of duties.
Lot.
Right?
It's a lot of roles.
A lot of roles. That's the word. That's the best word. There's a lot of roles. You gotta get in where you fit in and then be in that space. It's not, you know, you're completely somewhere on the opposite side of the country and, you know, you're never connected and you're not trying to learn anything and you're just saying you are because somebody told you are. That's
right.
Nah, you gotta, right. So I talk about some different things. Obviously the community, right? They have to accept you.
Right.
It's not just you run it and you say that you are. What do they say about you?
Right.
Do they even know you?
Yeah.
Are you even trying to get to know them? Right. Then the effort that you're putting into learning our ways. Then you have to have that courage to stand up and say you're Apache. A lot of people, you know, behind a closed door, they'll tell you, but you know, when they're downtown in a suit and tie, they don't talk about it.
Yeah. Right.
They don't want to identify. Right. So you gotta want to openly identify. Then finally, I think the last one is this idea of carrying it on and like having these conversations with your family and with your children. Right? Because it doesn't stop with you. Oh, I'm Apache.
Yeah.
Right? You know, what are you exposing your children to? How are you engaging with them? Are you bringing them to ceremony? Are they learning? Are they reading? Are they practicing? So it's a lot. It's a lot to doing this. So that's why I'm guest lecturing with the San Carlos Apache College, not because, you know, I want to get paid or anything. It's free.
Right.
I get paid over here at New Mexico State University, but what am I doing for my people?
Yeah.
So I can't just be over there and whoever's paying the tuition, that's all I care about.
Yeah.
What about the people over here? So this is sort of like that. It's just one example of how we can give back.
Right. And, you know, like what you're doing as, you know, helping, especially you help here in San Carlos, you know, especially with the history, because a lot of people don't dig into the history. And for you to come here and talk about the history of it brings up a lot of questions and a lot of answers also to what your family history is all about.
Yeah, man. it's just love, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how can we got to start with self-love.
Right.
I know it kind of sounds like touchy-feely, whatever, but a lot of times the way we act is, to others is how we feel about ourselves.
Yes.
If you think about it,
mm-hmm.
we're mean to somebody. We don't like them. We're gossiping, whatever. It's not our way.
Right.
That's probably because maybe there's something wrong. Maybe we're jealous.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or we want to make ourselves feel better so we could put somebody down so that we could feel like we can go up. It's not our way. And so just everybody being humble and being on this learning journey, like for your whole life.
Yeah.
Right? I had an elder tell me, he says, I learned so much from you. That blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I just read a lot of those things that I posted.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned so much from you. I said to myself, what? I learned a lot from you, man. That's what I'm learning from you.
Yeah.
But I think if the old people can learn from the youth, that makes the old person fast. Like, they can get energized and be the best elder they can be. And then if the child can listen to the elder, then they're going to stand out amongst the youth.
Right.
They're going to be right. They're going to be like, oh, that one's smart. Follow that one.
Mm-hmm.
So we each have something we can give.
Yeah. And that's what, like, I have two kids, 23 and 22. Mm-hmm. And the 22-year-old, my daughter, had a ceremony, coming age ceremony in 2019. And, I learned a lot just from her, and she's younger, I'm her dad. And, just knowing, she teaches a lot too. Not in a way of telling me things, just the way she is. And it's something that, and my son also, and so, you listen to your kids, you also learn a lot as an Apache.
Yeah.
Because that's where, it comes from. And Apaches, they're good people, and, their way of life is really, good. And so, it's something that everybody needs to understand.
Yeah. It is a good way of life, but when we turn our back on it, I wonder how much we love ourselves as a people, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was reading somewhere, I don't know if it's true, but they're talking about this area that you and I love so much over in San Carlos. And they were talking about, in these surrounding areas, the crime rate.
Right.
And so that made me wonder, right? That made me wonder about the health of the people, because a healthy community is a safe community. Think about that.
Right.
If my mind is right, I'm going to speak right. I'm going to do right. My body's right. I'm going to care about everybody.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But when something is off, right, then we got to get it back in balance. Goja. And so I said, well, nobody said it was all Apaches that was doing all this crime. You're right, because I saw two non-natives dipping from behind a building today when I was driving through Globe. It's not all Apaches doing this stuff. But at the same time, it's our community and it's our name, and we want to be number one in ways that matter. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be ranked among the most dangerous places. Right. So how do we, what's my job? I don't want to say leader. I'm not a leader, but I got an obligation to my people to speak words of wisdom when I have them, when the Creator provides them, to say to the young people out there and the people that are listening, you have a purpose. Mm-hmm. You have a purpose. Find that purpose. Maybe it's a podcast, but your people need you in good ways. Right. Because when you're healthy, you can help somebody else up.
Right.
But when you are not healthy, then we always got to help you up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so how do we commit to ourselves and commit to our community in a really meaningful and a deliberate way? Like your uncle says, I'm not worried about the outcome of Oak Flat. I have an obligation to do this, irregardless of what the United States decides. If I worry about what they're going to do based on how they've done things in the past, we might as well just go sit down somewhere.
Right.
But we can't do that. Mm-hmm. We got to stand up for something now. We got to stand up for our people. We got to stand up for our culture. We got to stand up for the youth. We got to stand up for the elders. We got to stand up for those who can't stand up right now and work on what I call nation building, community building. We got to build. I'm not talking about with bricks necessarily. I'm talking about building up the young people to take the place of the leaders now.
Yeah.
Who's the next chairwoman or chairman?
Yeah.
Who's the next principal of San Carlos Apache High School? Who's the next president of San Carlos Apache College? We got to be thinking like that.
Yeah.
See, when you need a fruit from a tree, you're not just going to go and plant that tree, then go next week and get a fruit off that tree. That tree got to go.
It's got to take time.
It got to take time, man. So we got to be digging. We got to be planting seeds, and we got to water those seeds right now. Because they're there. They're in the community. Unless somebody tries to steal them away, and that happens too.
Yeah.
MMIP.
Yeah. And that takes a big effect in the community. We have some that are current, and, you know, we got to come together. And we always say, if you know something, speak up, because, you know, we got to protect our kids and we got to protect our youth.
Yeah. I think, you said it best when you said those people that are missing, they weren't born for no reason. They were born to fulfill a role, a bridge. They were going to be a bridge to somewhere. Now, when somebody takes them without our permission, without their permission, you know, who's going to fill that role that the Creator put them here to fulfill?
Yeah. That's why I said the matriarch of Apaches or any indigenous community, it's very important. And that gets twisted when something happens in your family.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to get all deep and philosophical with you, man, but that's kind of, I don't know, that's that energy we have right now.
Right. Yeah. But all right, man. Well, this will be our first episode. Make sure we have some more.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We hit other topics if you like. Great to meet you. I like all your work. I like about, you think you wrote an article about Apache who died twice or, you know, something like that.
Yeah, man, that whole thing, Apache that died twice, wasn't necessarily about this guy that died twice. It's just about like
the name.
They write us off.
Yeah.
Dead. You know, if you disappear from the history book, oh, he died.
Yeah. But he did die.
So this particular ancestor, he died at least twice.
Yeah. In records. Right. Yeah, I read that. That was pretty interesting. It was like a 3-part thing you wrote on him. And, yeah. And he was
dealing with, man.
And he was from here too. Like he was around here at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we got to pray for those missing and murdered indigenous people, man, because can't write them off, man.
Yeah, you can't.
Somebody said, you know, they're gone. They're missing. They've been gone for a long time. They want us to, you know, forget about them. Don't forget about them.
No. All right, Ruben. Thanks, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah. Anytime, man. Anytime.
All right, man.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you all for tuning in to the Fight for Existence podcast. If you guys want to keep up with the podcast in general, what you could do is follow the social media account. The Instagram account is going to be Fight for Our Existence. Again, that's Fight number 4 Our Existence. Go ahead and give that a follow. And if you guys have any questions for us or you guys would like to be on the podcast, in the Instagram, there's a link. Go ahead and click that. No matter what kind of platform you guys are listening to this podcast on, there's always that plus or that follow button. So go ahead and click that so you guys can get notifications when we upload our next episode. And if you guys are listening on Spotify, what you can do is go ahead and rate the show. And if you guys are only listening on Apple Podcasts, what you can also do is write a review for the show. Thank you all for tuning in to the Fight for Existence podcast, and we will talk to you next time.